welcoming everybody, and then I'll just, ooh.
Okay, so as you just got noticed, we are recording this session, everyone. I'm Julie with the Polk County Mental Health and Disability Services region, and just really happy today to have Karen Williams with us. I met Karen Williams, we figured out probably about a decade ago, and she has been doing this work for a very long time and is amazing. But what I love most about Karen is just her energy and passion around all of the topics that she does. So excited to have her with us today. And with that, I know she has a ton of information to share with us. So I'm going to pop off of here. We'll let you know that Karen would prefer to take questions towards the end of the session. So if you have those questions, feel free to add them into the chat box, and we will kind of keep track of those a little bit as the day goes on and make sure that those questions get answered throughout the presentation or towards the end. And Karen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Miss Julie. What I am going to do is put me off the video, because you really shouldn't have any kind of just, distractions while you're watching the screen, because I put everything on the screen. So bye, see you later. And I'm going to tuck this right down here at the bottom where I can still see it. And oh, talking. That's me. All right. All right, let's get going. This is called a STEP class, and STEP stands for Science That Explains People. And these are mental health information sessions for helping professionals. And we actually are doing it for Polk County Health Services, and specifically the Children's Mental Health Services. And there are going to be 4 virtual sessions on the Zoom platform. And that means doing a full day of training, 6 hours, but we're doing it in 1.5 hour increments. And so there's 4 sessions, all on Thursdays, in the month of May, May 5th, May 12th, May 19th, and 26th, all from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And they're all presented by me. So we get a whole day of training in 4 little doses. Now we're going to examine 4 topics. The first one being development, how our human brain works and develops, and then behavior, how our survival instincts and temperaments affect our behavior. Now I refer to temperament several times, but we're going to cover it specifically in session 2. Adolescence, oh Lordy, that's multiplied by 10. All the special developmental challenges and risks for teens, we're going to talk about those. And then actually a session on distress and trauma. It's mental health management, interventions for daily life and different temperaments. And you're going to say, well, if that's session 4, I allude to several of them early on. But we actually have 60 different ways that we can calm someone or calm ourselves down that we can carry with us in our pockets. In other words, we don't have to have anything else. We can be naked, N-E-K-E-D, and alone and do it. So we're going to cover those. Because basically, when adults know how the human brain works and develops and how children's and teens' brains are different, so different, we can protect everyone better, our whole society. So let's get started. Now, first, some statistics. I want to introduce you to a report that was done in 2009. That's old. That's over, a decade ago. But it's called Preventing Mental, Emotional, and Behavioral Disorders Among Young People. And back there, that was just wilder than a March hare. You could prevent mental health disorders? Well, yes, you can. And what's wonderful about this was done by the National Academies. And it's called a consensus study report. In other words, it got a whole bunch of experts together. They went back through history, looked at trends. But darlings, this thing is 592 pages. And I don't know about you, but I'm not reading that sucker. And fortunately, there are report briefs from 4 to 6 pages each. And there's also a very simple handout for parents, but I use the report briefs. And here's what they found. Here's why this report blew people's socks off. Major findings. 75% of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders in the United States begin prior to age 24. 75%. Now, this is what blew their minds. 50% of mental, emotional, behavioral disorders in the U.S. begin prior to age 14. 1/2 of all the mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders that we have in the United States begin prior to age 14. And the brain is just in constant development up to around age 25 or 30. And 75% of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders begin there. While our brain is developing. So that blew people's socks off. And this is the other thing that did it. Symptoms show up 2 to 4 years before reaching the criteria for a disorder. You have the symptoms. So good Lord, we have the time to prevent disorders from forming. And if we start even earlier, we can even prevent the symptoms. So this was huge to understand that we can prevent them. We need to do it very early, and we need to do it before age 25, and that we can in many cases. So that was that report. Now you can get it free through this National Academy's website. What is that thing called at the bottom down there? Whatever. It's a link. But when you go to that link, it'll be for that book, and you can get it free. I mean, it's the downloads 592 pages. Don't do that. Do the report briefs. Over on the right-hand side of that link, you will find reports and briefs. And so just do those. They're simple, easy to do. You can publish them. Terrific. Okay, now this comes from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. This is more recent. It says 1 in 6 children ages 2 to 8 years old has a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. 1 in 6, 2 to 8 years old. And this is from the Journal of Pediatrics, again, 2018. It's about depression, anxiety, and behavior disorders. Now, it's 2018, that's old. But look, estimates of increases from 2018 to 22 vary so greatly between regions and states due to a loss of data during COVID epidemic. Because where we got kids information, we got it from daycare centers or, child care centers. I'm trainable, but I just haven't learned yet. Child care centers, schools. 2 things that were affected most by COVID, and we could not get reliable statistics at that time. So let's just take a look at let's look at the 3 to 5 year olds under depression, and 3 to 5 year olds with anxiety, and 3 to 5 year olds with behavior disorders. You can't even measure depression at 3 to 5 year old, but you can do definitely anxiety 3 to 5, and behavioral disorders you can measure. Let's go to 6 to 11 for depression. 6 to 11 for anxiety, 6 to 11 for behavior disorders. And this, they go to 12 to 17 for depression, 12 to 17 for anxiety, whoa mama, and 12 to 17 for behavior disorders. Well, you can see 6 to 11 have more behavior disorders than everyone else. And then anxiety reigns for teenagers. Now, what I'll say to you is the way this chart is laid out, with depression being first and anxiety second, that's just the opposite of what science has now told us. Science tells us that anxiety always comes first, always. We may not recognize it. We may not be able to identify it. We may not even know what it is, but
We're
it
gonna have to
comes
come up
first.
here about a webinar.
Hello?
I got her muted, Karen.
Okay. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. All right. So what I'm saying to you is that anxiety always comes first. Science shows us that, and it changes our chemistry so that depression is comes next, and then behavior disorders. So the way this is laid out is a little squirrely, but it's correct as far as the risks. I just wanted you to get a sense of how important it is that we do this for children now, because they're growing every year, getting older every year. And from an anxiety point of view, we need to be dealing with anxiety for 12 to 17 year olds very quickly, because that's going to go into adulthood very quickly. And then follows depression. And we all know that behavior disorders follow that. So now some definitions. Look, I explain health to kids all the time. And here's what I go. Here's our health. We are healthy if our body is at ease and our mind is in order. And the reason I chose that is because we have diseases and disorders. So I need to make sense of this. Our body is at ease and our mind is in order. And we have both physical and mental health. Now, you can measure physical health a dozen different ways, but in most cases, these are listed as being able to recognize health. What's your composition of bone, fat, and muscle? What's your coordination? Are you balanced and flexible? Are you strength? Do you have muscle power? Do you have stamina? Do you have endurance? As you get older, you don't have any of those, I'll tell you, but we're sticking with mental. I mean, you can do your cholesterol and everything else on your physical side, but let's talk about mental. Those are psychological, cognitive. And I've just said, it's basically becoming a human, but it's executive function, being able to think and plan and take care of yourself and kids and everybody else. And feelings, okay, your emotions, your behavior, those are your actions and reactions. And social, that's your interactions with others. That's how we measure psychological health, okay? Well, look, you can have an illness, a temporary minor disruption to your body's ease. You're still healthy. You've gotten a small illness. I mean, it's temporary and it's a minor disruption. But then diseases are significant disruption to our body's ease. And look, we can have an illness, a temporary minor disruption to the mind's disorder. People who go through grief, you lose your job, you lose your lover, you lose your husband, you lose your, kids. Face it, there are dozens of things that can just knock our mind off its little, orderly way. Disorders are significant disruption to our mind's disorder. Now, I've got this thing in my screen that's just blocking here, so I need to take that off. And I need to get rid of this sucker here. Just take this thing and shove it down somewhere. Here, go over here. Dis is the word for not, or the opposite of what precedes it. So if you have a dis-ease or a disorder, it helps you just clarify what you're talking about. Now, I think this is so simple that young people can understand it. I use it all the time for explaining things to parents. Parents are afraid of mental illness, scared to death of it. And I say, well, look, it's a temporary disruption to your mind's order. We figured out what an orderly mind is. We have a way to assess it. And when it's not, and it stays that way for a while, it could be labeled a disorder. But you can get upset for a long period of time and still manage it. I want them to know that physical and mental health are not that different. Now, let's go on. Mental health is more than an absence of an illness or disorder. It's much more than that. Now, being mentally healthy during childhood means reaching the developmental and emotional milestones because they are developing for a full 25 or 30 years, full speed. And learning healthy social skills and how to cope when there are problems and learning to be resilient. That means being mentally healthy. If you have those things in line, you are reaching your developmental and emotional milestones. You're learning healthy social skills. You know how to cope when there are problems and you're learning to be resilient. You have mental health. Okay. Now, mental disorders among children are described as serious changes in the way children typically learn, behave, or handle their emotions, which cause distress. If it didn't cause distress for parents, I doubt we'd ever diagnose it. But it causes distress and problems getting through the day. So mental health depends on managing distress. It's so simple for most of the mental health problems that our children have. There's a simple solution, not for all of them, that's for sure, but for at least half of them. Now, many children occasionally experience fears or worries and display disruptive behaviors. That's the nature of children. Now, if these symptoms are serious and persistent and they interfere with school, home, or play activities, the child may be diagnosed with a mental disorder. But that means that you have ignored those symptoms for long enough that it could reach the criteria for disorder because most of those symptoms show up 2 to 4 years ahead of time. Now, these are indicators of children's mental health. Can they show affection and friendship? Do they show resilience and flexibility when things get bad? Positivity, curiosity, persistence, and self-control. Those are simple measures, but they're all measures of mental health. And I want to make this so simple that when parents look at it, kids look at it, they've got a concept. Now, learning and development depend on a child's mental health. You can't learn and develop properly when you don't have your proper mental health. And a lot of kids don't develop and learn like they should, and we're not looking at their mental health as a cause. Teaching children how to manage stress, cope with problems, be resilient, step over trauma should be our top priority. And listen, social emotional skills mitigate and prevent mental health problems. That's why we want them in schools. That's why we want it in child care centers. That's why we want parents to learn it. Now, research shows when we reduce the causes of children's distress, or if we can't reduce the distress, and let's face it, in most cases, we can't reduce the distress they're under, teach them how to overcome and manage their distress, we can do the following. Reduce up to 50% of children's mental health disorders. I would take that. That's not everything, but I'd take 50%. Reduce child abuse, because when children are upset, it upsets their parents, and parents have a limit to which they can go before they take it out on somebody. And increase school success and graduation rates. Well, that'd be nice. And reduce referrals to juvenile justice. And reduce up to 40% of adult mental health disorders. Well, isn't that pretty? Yeah, that's what we do when we start focusing, not on their learning the ABCs or their numbers or whatever, on their mental health first. That should be the number one thing we focus on any occasion. Now let's go forward. Now, mental health also depends on our having a physically healthy brain, because an injury to our brain can affect our mental health. Falls, concussions, car crashes, etc., can affect the same nerves that are involved in our mental health. Everything depends on our nerves. So when we're in a car crash or concussion, or we have fall, it can actually affect our mental health. Now, when we assess a young person, we always ask about looking for medication misuse or drug use or missed medication. Sometimes kids have medication they can't get to. Sometimes it's as simple as taking that medication and they're going to be much better. But you know what we miss? We miss potential injuries. When did they fall? Did you stop the car too quickly? Did they play sports and have it? Always ask about the potential injury and to the neck and brain. Anything that affects the neck and the head, always ask about. I've seen kids acting out in class because they fell off their bike and no one caught that for several weeks. And the injury to the brain got worse and the mental health problems got worse. And adequate sleep is absolutely essential to our mental health. There is a bidirectional, two-way relationship between sleep and mental health, in which sleeping problems may be both a cause and a consequence of mental health problems. So if you got a mental health problem, if you don't sleep, and not sleeping can cause a mental health problem. Newborns 14 to 17, infants 12 to 15, toddlers 11 to 14, preschoolers 10 to 14, school age 9 to 12, and teenagers 8 to 10. When a teenager needs to sleep, let them sleep. Always determine the amount of sleep by age that a child is getting on a routine basis. Always include bedtime. Are they doing a bedtime? Is there a routine? Is it reasonable given the age? Do they own their own bed or are they sharing? How many people in the bed? How about the neighborhood noise, gunshots, and so forth? You know what's interesting? You can prevent mental health problems by just making sure every child has a bed or at least a comfortable pallet on their own. This is so funny. We have organizations across the United States that build children's beds and give them to families free. And they are backed up 5 years in requests from parents for beds. And that affects your mental health. Now, here's some basics. Health, our body's at ease, our mind is order. We have systems in our body. I'm going to mention them just quickly. Skeleton, muscles, your skin, hair, nails, your respiratory, your breathing, cardiovascular, blood circulation, digestion, your solid waste elimination, urinary, your water waste elimination, endocrine, and all your hormones. I can't say that first one, so I'm going to go lymphatic and inflammation control, reproduction, and then we have our nervous system. Our neurons, that's our nerves and our networks, they are in charge of all the communication between and the coordination of all other of the human body system, every one of them, all of them depend on our neurons and networks. It's called neuroscience. It's the most exciting field I've ever been in my whole life. I get excited about it because it's everything. I'm sorry, I get a little excited. Okay, by the way, our nervous system makes everything else work. So when we're talking about our nervous system, our neurons, our brain, we are talking about the entire body. Brain doesn't work alone. Oh, look, nerves. Well, I actually meant to say neurons because all our nerves are neurons. We have neurons in our brain and trillions of neurons in our body. We have dozens and many, hundreds actually, types of, cells in our bodies. But the most important cells are our nerve cells, which we call our neurons. Look at those babies. Now, neurons are communication cells that allow all the other cells in our body to work together. That's a symbol for a network of neurons. And we have 100 billion of those little babies in our brain and trillions in the rest of our body, all called neurons, all working together in networks. Nothing works without neurons. When you have an injury to your nervous system, you have an injury that could cost you everything. Now, here's an individual neuron. It's called a little brain tree. You can understand why it looks like a little tree. It's got little roots at the bottom and branches at the top. Now, individual neurons work just like our individual microscopic computers or cell phones. That's how we got our computers and cell phones. We studied the brain. We made a brain that was in our lap or on our hand, just like our cell phones and computers. Okay, that's how our neurons work. Now, neurons never work alone. They always work in networks, and that's our symbol for networks. Individual neurons are linked together to form networks for everything we feel, learn, think, and do. Everything. It's kind of like different parts of our body were our own personal devices and all linked to sharing the same networks. So our body is just like a group of networks, all working together. Local area networks, wide area networks, landlines, whatever you want to call them. Now, networks are important. Computers and cell phones use electricity and digital code to send each other messages. Well, isn't that the way they all work? Each message creates a new or strengthens an existing network. If I haven't called you before and I've called you, I've suddenly added you to my network of people, my wonderful little contacts, okay? But that's exactly how our neurons work. They use electricity and biochemical code. Bio means we make it with those chemicals in our own body to send each other messages. Just think of that neuron as a little computer or, cell phone. We have got 100 billion of them in our brain, all working on electricity and chemicals. And each message creates a new or strengthens an existing network. This neuron has never said anything to the next neuron. They say it, whoa, baby, they're connected. Now, biochemicals include neurotransmitters and hormones, so we're going to be talking about both of those today. Now, what I have here is a graphic about experience and stimulation shaping our neural network. Now, what you're looking at is neural networks, and when I'm talking about the brain's architecture, I'm talking about neurons. So if you hear anybody saying, oh, it's shaping your neural architecture, they're talking about your networks. And experience and stimulation are the same thing, okay? So you get an experience, it stimulates you, turns your little neurons on, baby. Now, what we have, dramatic growth of neuronal architecture from birth networks, okay? You have 100 billion newborn, 100 billion at 1 month, 100 billion at 6 months, and 100 billion at 2 years. They look very differently, but the same number of neurons. Look, we arrive with all our neurons. We get 100 billion brain trillions in our body, but only 25% have been pre-wired. In other words, networked. They're not networked. The only difference between these slides here are the networking that took place by the experiences that these people went through. What can a newborn baby do? Leak, squeak, eat, sleep, and poop. That's the entire repertoire of that child. Everything else, we got to train that kid in. That means the other 75% of those neurons are waiting for life to provide the experiences, and those experiences can wire them for good or for bad. Mental health or mental illness starts right there. Now, experiences wire and connect neurons into networks, and that is development. And development depends on our mental health, what was wired. Now, the neurons that are working get fed. This is one of the most important facts we need to really realize. Fed in our body means blood oxygen energy, our BOE. That's the little fish. Our BOE is the little fish, and the big fish is experience and stimulation we have. Sometimes we can get overstimulated. Sometimes we're understimulated. Nice amount of stimulation will get us very happy. So little fish, blood oxygen energy, following the big fish. Now, the neurons and networks that are stimulated by experience, in other words, the neurons and networks that are working, get the blood, oxygen, energy. Makes sense. Those that are not stimulated starve. Well, use it or lose it. Now, whatever we're doing is getting the most of our blood, oxygen, energy. So if we're busy being upset, that's where our blood, oxygen, energy is going. Everything we do takes energy. So during childhood, we cannot afford to waste any because it all needs to be spent on our having a mental health that's working so that we can develop. This worry, fretting, being angry, all of these are wasting energy, the child's energy and the adult's energy, because most adults get worried, fretting, angry, impatient. Now, learning is the first step in our development. You know, what's interesting is there are certain psychologists whose theories were proven by neuroscience. Piaget, you develop by learning. He was French. He talked funny. Okay, so he talked in an interesting fashion. And Erikson, stages, and then Maslow, needs. Those three were proven by neuroscience. Now, this is from Piaget. Learning is the first step in our development. We learn to crawl. Okay, we learn to sitting down and look at itself, look at the little equipment, whatever, media. And, you know, we go to school and we do media long before school. We learn our numbers and we learn our signs and we learn to read. And hopefully we learn to manage our emotions. But learning and memory make development possible. Now, there are short-term working memory and long-term memory. And positive calming and distressful memories are stored separately. So our positive calming memories go in one little storage center and our distressful memories are stored in another little center. Now, where is our blood, oxygen, energy going to go? When we're upset or distressed, our BOE, our blood, oxygen, energy, is shifted away from our positive memories to our distressful memories. So we keep hanging on to those because that's where our blood, oxygen, energy are going. Now, if something is messing with our positive calming memory, it's messing with our learning and our development. Okay. Now, humans learn to develop by looking and for finding patterns. That's what infants are looking for. That's why you have to repeat something and be consistent. Oh, repeated and consistent. Now, kids love to explore. They want to know what's there. They want to observe models. They want to look in here. They want to seek guidance. Show me how, show me how. And there's an automatic way into the brain that you don't have to do anything else but just stand back and just be there. It's called mirror neurons. While our kids are looking for patterns, they find them in us and we don't even know we're showing them. There's an automatic one, it's called mirror neurons, and those are our observer neurons, and they're there from birth and they're there till you die. But what's interesting, we can't memory, Alzheimer's is a question of memory. We can observe, but they just don't get stored. So mirror neurons, those are observer neurons. What is observed is automatically stored in our memory if our memory is working. And if I'm observing you fighting, guess what? That's stored. Being angry, that's stored. Yeah. Being happy, being kind. Now, okay, let's understand this. Say we're both having an MRI scan of our brains. You do an actual activity while being scanned. You have an actual experience because you're in the scanner, you're doing something. Me, I only observe you being scanned. I have a virtual experience. I see you do it. But you know what? Our scans look exactly alike. The same neurons were stimulated and wired and networked in both brains. Really? Well, yeah, if you want to secure them, you probably need to do it yourself, but you now know how it's done. Be careful what you model. It can wire the brain of the observer, and modeling is one of the most powerful ways to teach. The most powerful because do what I say, not what I do, is spitting in the wind because they're going to do what you do. Be careful what you model. Watch yourself. Because if you aren't modeling the kinds of things that we're talking about in session 4, all the ways to calm yourself, if you're not modeling those all day long, if you aren't teaching them all day long, if you aren't, you got it. Okay. Now, the big picture. Now, life is like being in the middle of a seesaw, and it's mounted precariously on a large ball, meaning that the seesaw is shifting unexpectedly all the time and is super sensitive to any adjustments we may make. We're just hanging out there. Now, our only job is to learn how to keep our balance so that we can do everything else in life. And the problem is that we learn, develop, and have mental health only when we're in balance. Let me say it again. We only learn, develop, and have mental health when we're in balance, homeostasis. Yeah, balance is also known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is a chemical balance. Now, you can say that in a different way. You don't have to talk about seesaw. Hang on, I'm going to clear my throat. We can say life is like a moving mobile balance beam. Our job is to learn how to mount and dismount safely and how to perform on the beam. To do this, we must learn to how to stay on the beam, because people want us on the beam all the time. We can't just step off the beam and rest. Yes, you can, but that's not what life expects of us. And this is not easy, staying on that beam, because we're not in charge of the beam. Life is. And we do not know, we don't come into the world knowing anything about the beam, our job, or the consequences of not staying on the beam. That's what life is all about. It teaches us the hard way. We know relatively little at birth. Experiences teaches us and develops us. And that type of experience that we have can either make us have mental health or put our mental health in question. Now, we have nature and nurture. Nature is our DNA, our genes. And if you add fear to those genes, you're going to have trouble. That's nature versus nurture. It's not versus, it's plus nurture. But it feels like it. It's our DNA and genes and fear versus calming experiences. Those calming experiences wire us one way, DNA and our genes and fear wire us another. Now, it's called our nature, our DNA and genes are all about survival. And nurture, those calming experiences we go through, are all about mental health and development. So it's survival versus mental health and development. It's what it actually feels like, not supposed to be. Now, look, DNA, genes, and survival. These are our warning systems, okay? That's all that DNA is set up to do, is help us survive. Everything else we're responsible for. The adults in this child's life is responsible for the mental health and development. DNA says, look, I've given you systems. All the systems are there at birth. Just use them. Well, I need instruction. Well, that's what your generations are for. Okay, mental health and development. There's his mental health. Now, you can be upset, which is distressed, over if you're bored, and over if you're anxious, and under if you're bored, or overwhelmed completely, which means traumatized. Or you can be all set, stressed, sufficiently stimulated so that you're getting your blood, oxygen, energy to the healthy parts of your brain. And what's interesting is homeostasis is being balanced. Now, mental health and cognitive development only happen when we're in homeostasis. That's where our resiliency comes in, able to be flexible and bounce back. When our upset has pushed us down on that, clasp your hands, clasp your fingers. Okay, you made a little clasp here. Now bring your elbows up near your shoulders where your fingers clasp. And then you created a little balance beam. Rock it back and forth. Well, survival is always going to rock you in one direction. Okay. And you've got to push it back toward mental health and development. Survival is not about those. Survival is just about staying alive. Push it back. And to do that, you need resiliency. So that's our concept. That's our concept for today, is a balance beam, homeostasis right in the middle, resiliency right in the middle, being all set at one end and being upset at the other. Got it? Okay. Same slide, new information. Now, there's our little balance beam. Oh, wow, is it tipped? Survival is always number one. No matter what you do, survival is going to be number one. That's what it's going to do to you. Say anything that causes you some distress happens, survival takes over. That's when you're upset. That's our warning systems. Our survival instincts and reflexes are our internal automatic alarm, and it goes off. And that's included in that 25%. We got this at 25 when we had our 25%. Now, that means we have fight, flight, and freeze automatically. Now, that little gauge is our temperament. We're not dealing with that yet. It shows up in some slides and it doesn't in others, but we'll cover that in session 2. You get your temperament at birth as well. It's not your personality, it's your temperament. You get fight, flight, and freeze. We don't have a choice about these. Something upsets us. Now, if we can manage that, what upsets us, not to get upset, that'd be great. We won't have our fight, flight, and freeze. If we get our fight, flight, and freeze, we got to deal with these suckers because they're going to take over. Now, to survive in life, we must tame and manage our fight, flight, and freezes. These are survival responses. This is our survival behavior responses. This is all about saving our lives. It doesn't matter if we tick off the world, if we don't have good mental health or whatever. It just wants us alive. Now, those must be tamed and must be managed. We must take back control of our balance beam. We may push it in the other way. Our mental health is up in the air and our cognitive development is a risk otherwise. Now, people think kids act the way they do because they don't have a choice. Not unless we teach them what to do when fight, flight, and freeze comes about. And our temperament tells us how much we get. I had a temperament where if somebody sneezed at me, I was going to knock them down. Well, I'm destined for juvenile justice. It's a miracle I wasn't there. Friend's mother saved me, took me in and adopted me and taught me some stuff because anything upset me. And I was a fighter. I didn't run. I didn't freeze. I knocked you down. But I learned after a while to take control of those urges. And I learned how to be flexible. I learned how to manage. I learned how to breathe. I want you to understand that when kids act the way they do, it's because no one's taught them another way to do it. And that's the first thing we need to do. It's not discipline them, but teach them. Now, we see the goal of nature, okay? Our nature, our DNA, our genes is our survival. Our number one job is to overreact and jump to conclusions. That is our number one job. And as long as we're doing that, we're probably going to survive. And anything we perceive as challenging or distressing or threatening, anything fearful, automatically triggers our survival instincts and reflexes. That's our warning signals. That's our fight, flight, and freeze. Those are going to be triggered automatically. But when a situation is not actually threatening, these reflexes can cause our behavior to be out of control, completely out of control. Everybody's focused on our nasty little behavior. And if not tamed and managed, our survival instincts and reflexes can overwhelm us and knock us off the beam. And that is called being traumatized. When you're knocked off the beam, I make trauma real easy. That's my description of it. You're knocked off the beam. And everybody gets knocked off once in a while, but it's better if you step off because you can get back on a whole lot easier. Now, our number one job is to overact and jump to conclusions, which means fight, flight, and freeze is going to be automatic until we teach a child how to manage that. And being overwhelmed is being traumatized. Now, the goal of nurture is to tame our survival reflexes. Our survival reflexes are there for a purpose. We don't want to get rid of them. We just want to put them in a cage. Now, we'll all recognize Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I've kind of redone it a little bit, but I've called it my Williams hierarchy of needs. And this is our reward center. If you want to know where the reward center is in the brain, just make a little fist, and it's right in the center of your little fist, and your brain's in the fist, and right in the center is your reward center. It's called your limbic system. And let's look at this. If you've never done this before, if you use a pyramid for a model, you always start at the bottom and work up. And this is going to be Maslow's on this side, and right here on the left side, I've added some stuff. I've just added one word. I don't like a lot of words. So let's talk. We have physical needs. Now, the goal of nurture is to tame our survival reflexes. And this reward center is where our needs are listed. These are our basic needs. That's our reward center, is our basic needs. Nurture is to meet our basic needs. The only way you're going to meet your basic needs is to tame your survival reflexes. Got it? You got some physical needs. Breath is number one. You do without your breath for 15 minutes and you're dead. Okay? Well, 15 minutes of your blood system gone makes it that way too. Water, sleep, food, shelter, sex, whatever. All physical needs need to be met. These are our comforts, okay? Anything that adds a comfort to our life. And then safety. There's psychological safety, physical safety, financial safety, whatever. And that means there needs to be some consistency and some choice and control. And the thing we take about kids have almost no consistency in their life and no choice and control. That's choice and control that teenagers are looking for, because that's what they have to practice having under supervision before they can use it themselves. If they don't get it, they'll take it. Belonging and bonding. Now, I call that connection and compassion. Connection with someone who has compassion for you. It's hard to have connection with somebody who has no compassion for you. And very few kids in the juvenile justice system have family members on the outside they feel that they belong to and are bonded with. They don't feel safe. They have no choice and control. Okay, so, and then there's self-esteem. How you feel about yourself? Do you feel competent about anything? Can I make the funniest face in the room? I got to have something that I can do better than anybody else, or just as well. And can I contribute? When I'm sent out of the classroom, I've been told you're not competent and you do not contribute. Well, that's not what I told that child. Well, that's what that child heard. Confidence. All of these build confidence. Now, those two, your physical needs being met and feeling safe, is about trust. You don't trust people who do not meet your physical needs and who do not make you feel safe. You threaten me in any way, and I do not trust you. And trust is how we build everything else. So I need my physical needs met where I can rely on them. Homeless children, particularly, do not have their physical needs met and do not feel safe, and they trust very few people. So building their trust is the very first thing you need to do if you're going to get their mental health okay, because they are not developing the way they should develop because they're so upset about being homeless and all the kinds of things that go on with that. And self-worth. How do I feel about myself? And, motivation comes from that. Don't you tell me a kid's not motivated. You put this slide, laminate it, blow it up and stick it in your office. And you ask, what's that kid missing? Because that's the goal of nurture, is to stop our survival reflexes from showing up. And that kid's not motivated, doesn't care about himself, doesn't trust anybody, is angry, belligerent, hostile, dangerous. You better find out what they're missing. Okay, so there's our little trust and self-worth, and there's our motivation. If you're not motivated, motivation comes from the confidence you have in your competence and contribution, the fact you have connected with somebody who has compassion for you, and that you have some choice and control, and you have some consistency in life, and you have some of your comfort needs met, or you know how to get them. And all of those are good for our brain. When our needs are met, we're more likely to be calm, to be able to listen and learn and think clearly, and to manage our own mental health and behavior. Being calm just absolutely rescues us, and that comes from having your needs met. That's why we added food to school, and why we understood this at some level, but we've stopped understanding it when it comes to mental health. This is what rescues us. Now, when your needs are not met, we fear for our well-being and we're distressed. We're not just anxious and nervous and worried and you have tension and bored. We are literally traumatized. We are literally knocked off the beam. And so many of our kids are just off the beam and they're traumatized and we don't recognize it. Now, remember, we have a low beam, but when life throws us a curveball, I mean, quite literally, we can be overwhelmed, lose our balance, be knocked off seesaw, and be left flat back on the ground. We're mentally, emotionally, and sometimes socially overwhelmed. And guess what? Being overwhelmed is a definition of psychological trauma. Psychological trauma is defined as a level of mental, emotional, or social distress that exceeds or overwhelms one's coping skills and habits. And, psychological trauma exist in the person, not in the event. We have ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences where your needs are not met and you have not ever been taught how to meet those needs, or at least to step over them. Now, we all respond differently to anything challenging or threatening, in other words, adversity. And the same situation can be just mildly inconvenient to one person, absolutely devastating to another. Family divorce is one of those things. For some kids, it's just get about time. Hallelujah. For others, oh my God. And some people need far more support than others to overcome and recover. It's just the way we are. And please remember, anything that's psychologically overwhelming, in other words, psychologically traumatizing, is likely to knock us down. That is not a measure of resilience. That's normal for everyone. It's how we face the situation afterwards that defines our resilience. And you need a lot of support, and you need those things to be habits. Now, physical and psychological resilience are essential to mental health because they both require flexibility, strength, stamina, and endurance. In other words, hardiness. Look at that tree. Resilience means you bend and not break. That tree is planted in rock and has had a prevailing wind to one side so that it is bent over. But you know what? That tree is not just surviving. That tree is thriving. Look at the leaves on that tree. It's creating shade for other plants. I mean, it's absolutely incredibly healthy. Yes, it doesn't look like other trees. And yes, it's been through a hard life, but it is thriving. And that's what we want for our kids. Remember, I'm sticking with psychological resilience, not just physical. So psychological resilience is defined of the ability to rise to meet challenges like our little knockdown balloon does, and to adapt to change and to keep going in the face of adversity and to recover and bounce back. And you cannot do that all the time on your own. Now, a layman's definition of psychological resilience is psychological hardiness. Yes, you get knocked down. That's not a measure of your resilience. So whether you bounce back up. Now, there are very few of us who cannot be overwhelmed or knocked down by something adverse. That's just the way it is. And we all overcome it differently, that one size does not fit all. Some people go over, some under, some through. And some of us take a unique route, just go around. And most of us need help. We cannot get over that wall without help. And for many of us, any form of adversity is absolutely overwhelming. We just shut down. Now, listen, you want to change the networks in the brain, the architecture of the brain, starve those networks. Look, this is a graph of a chart showing our cognitive development. Prefrontal cortex, put your hand on your forehead, that's your prefrontal cortex, and your hippocampus, make your little fist and look in the hole of it. That's your hippocampus there. They're in charge of cognitive development, thinking and memory, okay? Now, in normal networks, you have many, many connections. Now, when we're upset, our blood oxygen energy is diverted away from our PFC and the hippocampus to our alarm system. So when you have a normal network is working, new connections, networks increase. This is great for the brain, great for development, great for mental health. But when you're upset, your blood oxygen energy gets taken away from those networks. And it goes to being upset. Disrupted connections and networks in your prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, because those only work when you're in balance, only work when you have homeostasis, only work when they're being fed. Okay. Now, the longer we're upset, the stronger our alarm system networks get, and the stronger and stronger and stronger. And the weaker our cognitive developmental health works get because they're not being fed. Children need calming habits and lots of adult support to have good mental health and to get past mental health disorders. Now I'm going to talk about the value of being calm. Okay, look at that little Zen brain. Everything depends on our neurons and their biochemistry. Okay, our neural biochemistry makes it possible for us to move at will, listen, focus, concentrate, remember, contribute, think rationally, be self-regulate, be patient and courteous, have compassion and empathy, recover from psychological trauma or other behavioral health problems, stay physically and psychologically healthy, and be resilient and recover from injury. Oh my God, that's important, but only when we can first feel calm. We can only do on that list. Are you trying to do one of these things? You're trying to help children do one of these things? Well, they have to be calm first. First. You can't go on to any of these until they're first calm. And never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down. In fact, you tell me to calm down, you're going to be lying down. Now, you have to understand, not everyone has experienced being calm. I had not experienced being calm until I was a teen. And then I was a terror. Some people have never been calm in their lives. Not everyone has practiced getting and staying calm. In fact, I saw no interest in it. When I was taught, well, I was told, we're going to help you calm yourself down. I went, well, screw that. That's not going to help me. Everybody, I'll just be a victim. Because I don't know value in being calm, because those people were the ones that were always beset by others. So I have to ask, do I know what it feels like to be calm? I did not know what it felt like to be calm. It felt vulnerable to me. Muscles relaxed, breathing evenly and deep, sitting quiet. Okay, hey, target. What does it look like? What does it sound like? I don't know. Can I produce a feeling calm at will? I didn't want to. Do I value being calm, or do I want to be calm? You got to know this before you ever start working with kids. The number one job of us adults is to teach you to CIA, calm themselves, naked and alone. You can't have a dog to pet. You can't be carrying something in your pocket. You know, the only things that you can do that work for kids are when they're naked and alone. You know, I got that term. I was working for juvenile justice at the time and doing chart reviews at federally funded justice centers, juvenile justice centers. And I looked at the charts, and then if the client was still there, I called the young person in, the participant in, and reviewed what the chart said. Did it accurately reflect? And the kids, I was never going to tell anything. It couldn't be said to anybody else. So they really talked to me. And this one brilliant juvenile justice center out on the West Coast, it's in Marion, Oregon. I think it's called the Mariposa County. And it had a remarkable history with juvenile justice. They taught kids how to be independent living people before they ever left the detention center. They had a garden and a deli center, and the public, the general public, was invited to purchase their sandwiches there, purchase the produce there. Kids did all the sandwiches. That they had no adult supervision, and they were never ever off a penny, because if the kids found the change box short, they put the money in themselves. And they taught them how to use, now I wouldn't have done this, but they taught them how to use chainsaws. Oh God. But okay, I was interviewing this young woman, and she was working. She's a detention center participant, resident, and she was working at the sandwich place. And I took my lunch late every day, and she was there all by herself. So she'd sit at the table with me and talk to me. She said, this is a wonderful place. They have a room where you can go in, and they put a warm blanket on you. You can play with all sorts of you know, squishy little things, and you can read a book, you can do a journal, you can, you know, all sorts of stuff. So you can calm yourself down. She said, but you know what? I wish they'd teach me something I could do when I was naked and alone. Because when I get out of here, I'm not going to have a room or a blanket or anything else. I'm really just going to be naked and alone. So, and she spelled it, she just said it like naked, N-E-K-E-D, and alone. I wish they taught me something there. So the things that we're going to do in our last session are all what you can calm yourself when you're naked and alone. Sorry I took that much time, but you need to know where that term came from. You need to, the C is calm. Next is identify their triggers, sensations, and emotions. Kids do not know a thing about their sensations. We're going to cover that next time, along with our different triggers and our, you know, our, what they call it, temperament. They don't know a thing about that. You know, your emotions and sensations are different. When you have a sensation, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your body temperature goes up, your muscle tension, all these things that tell you things are not going like you want to. And the first time a young person kisses another person, oh my God, their heart rate goes up, their blood pressure goes up, their body temperature goes up, their muscles go, oh yeah. They think that's love. They don't know those are sensations that you can control. After you've had the sensation, you name the emotion. Do they know what their triggers are? And know how to ask for help. We stopped teaching this. In fact, we've actually stopped teaching it in schools. Many times we do not teach children who, when, and how to ask for help. That needs to be taught in every grade, from pre-K child care centers, okay, all the way up through high school. Because they are changing constantly and forgetting everything that you told them the last time you talked to them. CIA. Now, the most important question for children when it comes to mental health is, do I know how to calm myself in all situations? Can I do it naked and alone, and have I practiced it to become a habit, like walking and talking? If they cannot calm themselves like walking and talking. Now, could they walk and talk when they got here? No. How long did it take them to learn to walk and talk? Some 2 to 4 years. At least 1 year for most people in walking. 2 years for talking. How long did it take you to learn that as a habit, where you can get up, and if your muscles and everything are working, you still have all of your parts, you can just walk or talk whenever you decide to. That's how it needs to be. Now, I'll tell you right now, this is one of the things because in case you don't turn up for the other sessions, diaphragmatic breathing can change everything. It changes our biochemistry. It calms us, relaxes, directs our blood oxygen energy toward development, and strengthens our immune system. Look, our diaphragm is our primary breathing pump, and there are people who've never used a diaphragm. I didn't know where it was, didn't know what it was for. Taking air in is operated by our spinal nerves. Our spinal nerves in charge of survival, and letting air out is operated by our vagal nerves, called our compassionate nerves. And now, when you breathe out longer than you breathe in, we calm ourselves. You can do that by laughing. It's the healthiest thing you can possibly do. Singing, humming, whistling. Don't like to laugh? Do what they teach you in treatment centers for cancer. Fake your laughter. Your body doesn't know, but you're at least lowering the amount of chemo that you take. Did you know that our diaphragm is also the pump for our lymphatic system, in charge of our lymph nodes, cleaning our blood toxins and controlling inflammation? That's why they do it in cancer treatment centers. Yeah. They use diaphragmatic breathing. Yoga does, Tai Chi does, martial arts does. Laughing does. If you're feeling depressed, turn on a comedy routine. Sing, whistle, stomp. Now, remember, life's like a seesaw. And have you ever been in the middle of a seesaw? That's where the power is, right in the middle. You can shift your weight to favor either side. And we can only recover when we're balanced. In other words, when we're calm, when we're in homeostasis, when we are in the center. When we have enough upset that it weights that side down, we need to know what to do when our internal alarms go off. Blood pressure up, heart rate up, heart bleed. Am I breathing short and rapid? All of those things tell us that things are not, blood oxygen energy are not going to calming me down. Can I, look at what that little baby did. Look, he just moved over. Can I control myself enough that I can shift myself over? I can be calm. Calm is biochemically balanced, and how we can find that calm and balance is our state of resilience. The most important single habit we can build is when we're upset and we want to be all set, how to reset. Do I know what to do when I'm upset? Can I calm myself? Is it a habit? Do people around me help me? We can redirect our blood oxygen and energy anytime we want to. We can become resilient. And how quickly we move our blood oxygen energy, how quickly we shift ourselves, is our state of resilience. And that's what we need to be working with our kids. Start them young, repeat it. Look, if you teach them, that's all you teach them in childcare. First grade, second grade, third grade. Time they're in third grade, they're going to remember it through 6. Just give refreshers. Middle school, you got to start over. They've lost their minds and their memories. In high school, you have to start over. But they can catch it so much quicker. And they have friends that'll help them. Now, we can calm ourselves by managing our behavior biochemistry. You ready? Good. So, our biochemistry. Our biochemistry refers to the sets of chemicals we make inside our own bodies. That's why it's called bio, okay? We have 2 that operate our behavior. One set operates our survival instincts and reflexes, our fight, flight, and freeze, and those are our alarms, and we have a set that calms us and rescues us. Now, we have 2 sets of behavior biochemicals. We have hundreds of chemicals, but these I've just singled out 5. One is the alarming, the other is calming. The alarming speeds us up, the calming calms us down. Now, the first one I think of is norepinephrine. And by the way, when there's a nor in front of epinephrine, norepinephrine, it's a neurotransmitter. Epinephrine's a hormone. I call it Nora, We love Nora. She's so fun. And then there's adrenaline. Now, adrenaline releases your fight, flight, and freeze. And there's epinephrine, another kind of adrenaline. Now, these are for emergencies or when you just get upset. Okay. That's fight, flight, and freeze. It's all over the place. And then there's cortisol. It's a steroid. It can be your friend or it can be your enemy, but it's released automatically. And it actually is for operating and healing our body and or for when we feel threatened or upset. So those are the ones we're going to talk about. Talk about norepinephrine, adrenaline, epinephrine, cortisol. Okay. Now the calming ones, the those that calm us down, are our fabulous five, and we're going to cover those a little bit differently. Those always rescue us, and they're released when our needs are met. Oh my God, if we met the needs, we get these chemicals. That's why our needs calm us down. Okay. Or when we use calming habits, the habits that we can, breathing, running, whatever. Okay, now that's going, and this got to be balanced. You want your alarms ready. They're always going to be ready. They're automatic. They're built. They're they're managed automatically. So we got to focus on our calming ones, but we don't get rid of our alarming ones. That takes breath in. Our calming ones blows breath out. Now, our number one alarm biochemical is cortisol. Dun, dun, dun. Cortisol is a hormone that's a vital part of our survival system. It's one of our alarm biochemicals. And most of the time, it's our friend, but too much can be dangerous. It's released along with adrenaline. Anytime we perceive a situation or condition to be threatening or upsetting, both adrenaline and the biochemical steroid called cortisol are released into our bloodstream immediately and automatically. We don't have a choice. Now, cortisol is an anti-inflammatory steroid. And actually, it's in the short term, it's helpful. But it prepares our body to handle and heal from injury. In fact, we have a medication based on our cortisol called hydrocortisone. You get a shot of hydrocortisone, the fever goes down and your swelling goes down, the redness goes away, pain is relieved. Exactly what our anti-inflammatory steroid cortisol is supposed to do for us. But it also speeds us up and increases our blood sugar and raises our heart. So in the long term, it's harmful. Now, we all know what being on outside steroids can do. Well, our natural steroid cortisol can be just as damaging. It's for short-term use only, short-term use only, short-term use only. And teenagers under the same upset or distress as adults in the same situation exactly get a dose of a distress hormone cortisol that's 2 to 5 times more than that adults. And it stays 2 to 5 times longer. Yeah. This helps explain why being upset or distressed can be so damaging to teen brains and why they have trouble calming down after an upsetting, distressful episode. You ever said to a teen, honey, just calm down? Oh, well, yeah, that did it. It takes longer for teens to calm down, and they need at least 2 or 3 of those calming habits. Now, if you have long-term cortisol, it increases the risks of, now remember, your blood oxygen energy is going in the wrong way. Sharp intake of air, gasping, rapid, shallow breathing, or holding your breath. Okay, increase in blood sugar. It increases your blood pressure. It increases your heart rate. It increases your muscles. It heightens the stimulation of long-term survival memory. All you can think of is your fight, flight, and freeze. And it decreases your sensitivity to pain, which is wonderful. But it also takes blood oxygen and energy and disrupts digestion and elimination and the manufacture of serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine. That's, just our digestive system is our second brain. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, yeah. So it takes all those chemicals that we need. It robs blood oxygen energy from our immune system and healing. And it robs blood oxygen energy from our cognitive development and healing. And it's, pardon me, it messes with our mental health like you would not believe. Now, by the way, when breathing is shorter, we're holding our breath, we're creating more and more cortisol. So if a child is going, they're just creating more cortisol. If you do not get them and do something that allows them to, they're never going to get well. Okay, now where's our alarming biochemical made? Our good old cortisol made on our adrenal glands, was at the top of our kidneys. Hypothalamus notifies the pituitary gland, which notifies our adrenal glands, and it makes cortisol. That can be a friend or a foe. Now, our calming biochemicals, the fabulous five, woo, rescue us, honey. Now, I need to move this sucker somewhere. Got this little bar at the top of my, and I don't know how to quit it. It's getting in my way. Our fabulous five all partner in managing our reward center, our basic needs. Now, if we want our basic needs met, this is what we get. Okay, now here's our basic needs. That's our reward center. This is what we're supposed to have, and it breaks all these chemicals. Okay, now let's get started. Now I'm going to distort. There's going to be a distortion here in a minute of this particular reward center because I've got lots of information to show you. See, that's distorted. Now, serotonin is about calm. Now, she has two nicknames, Rest and Digest and Restful Alertness. Now, I never call her by her full name. I call her Sarah. I want you to say, Sarah. Nobody's going to hear you. You're on mute. Sarah, 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 Sarah. Sarah is just incredible. Look, she's in charge of everything. She's everywhere in the body. She's in charge of all our comforts, all of our comforts. And, and she's everywhere in the body. 85 to 95% of serotonin is made in our gut. Serotonin is a rest and digest. She actually runs the gut, and she's in charge of restful alertness. She's in charge of being able to learn, to develop. Serotonin is, oh man, she is the coolest broad. I like her a lot. Okay, now then there's Oxy-T, oxytocin. It's about calm, safety, and trust, and bonding. New mothers, when they don't have enough oxytocin, they have postpartum depression, which means the child doesn't get its nurturing, and it doesn't have its oxytocin, and it doesn't get its needs met, and it has failure to thrive. Well, it can have attachment disorder, at least, and maybe even failure to thrive because mother's not nurturing. So Oxy-T is terribly important, but it's up in all of us. People want me to put a gold chain on him, but I haven't done that yet. Oxy-T, baby. Calm, trust, safety, and bonding. He's all about the second and third tiers of our needs. And, 45, 55% is made in our second brain. Now, Dr. Dopa, whoa, baby, calm, pleasure, motivation, and all the pluses. Look at he put that thumb up. Woo-hoo! Now he's in charge of calm and pleasure and motivation and all the pluses. Now, let me just tell you, he's about all that whole top area. 45 to 55% is made in our gut, our second brain. And guess what? Here's the pluses. When you have dopamine present, you can have anandamide. Does everybody know what anandamide is? Anandamide is our body's own THC. In fact, how we found THC, we found a receptor that matched our THC from outside. And that receptor's in our brain. And we went, well, you know what? If we have a receptor that, is home for THC, we must have THC in our body somewhere. Well, we did, anandamide. It's called calm, peace, and our bliss chemical. It works with Dr. Dopa, and it works with serotonin. Both of them cannot do their jobs as well without anandamide. And we make anandamide. Look, when it's created automatically when we have dopamine present on demand, when we feel safe and when we help others feel safe. It's when we're doing something for others that we get the most anandamide in our body. Oh, so kids volunteering, kids doing community service, not only learn about their community and how to work together in teams and how to solve problems, but they are actually creating their body's own chemical that they need. And then endorphins, the body's morphine. It's our pain relief and euphoria. I mean, you're all adults, so I'll just ask you, never mind, I won't, because think about when you have euphoria, what you've just done. But it's our body's pain relief. And you know what? It helps dopamine do his job, but it's created automatically when we have dopamine present. And on demand, we can get it anytime when we're moving, running, dancing, exercising, laughing. Laughing makes pain relief. It's the reason why they do it in cancer treatment centers. Okay, that's our fabulous five. And you know what? The trigger is belly breathing, belly breathing, belly breathing, belly breathing, belly breathing. Oh, isn't that something? So if I can't get my needs met, I can actually trigger these. Yes. If I get my needs met, I get them automatically. If I have to trigger them myself, do I know my trigger for them? Yes, belly breathing. I can actually create them. And skills and habits. Our skills and habits in the upper left-hand corner. Do we have those that help us balance out fight, flight, and freeze? That will make these same kinds of things. We meet our needs. We can have them automatically. But if we can't meet our needs, and most people can't meet all their needs all the time, they can trigger these by belly breathing, using your diaphragmatic breathing. It's important, guys. Now, our kids have never been on a higher wire in their life or a tinier wire, more desperately dangerous. And, we're full of cortisol. But look, if I bring Sarah in, my cortisol is made less. Dr. Dopa, whoa, baby, he gets less. Oxy-T, he's smaller. Endorphins and anandamide, our bliss, drops him. If I have protective skills and habit like belly breathing, hey, he doesn't get triggered. Cortisol's out, norepinephrine and interest and focus is in, and I have perfect balance, and that's homeostasis. And here's my mental health and my development right there. Now, the morphine molecule mimics our body's natural endorphin. There's our natural endorphin, the same thing morphine does. Our endorphins are psychological and physical painkillers. We have our own painkillers in our body. We can build endorphins on demand when we're active and moving, exercising, laughing, hardly, deep, slow belly breathing, breathing out, belly breathing. And marijuana's THC molecule mimics our basic anandamide. Look at the nerve receptor that's in our brain, and there's anandamide and there's THC. And our own anandamide is calm, well-being, and bliss, and it works with serotonin to help our bodies regulate functions ranging from appetite, sleep, mood regulation, neuroprotection, immune function, pain management, even fertility. We don't need THC. We need our own anandamide. And we can build anandamide on demand by belly breathing, deep, slow breathing out, smiling, laughing, music, gratitude, generosity, doing something nice for someone else. It's in our reach. We just aren't reaching. Belly breathing. Now, endorphin and anandamide deficiencies, because you must have dopamine present before you have endorphins and anandamide. When you have a dopamine deficiency, you have an endorphin and anandamide deficiency. You better be doing belly breathing like crazy to make them up. Physical and psychological pain become more intense and less manageable if you do not know how to breathe, and we can't find comfort and control, calm and comfort, and we're distressed, and more cortisol is released, and we're in a vicious cycle. How do we stop that cycle? Belly breathe. And by the way, ghrelin, that's our hungry and the hangries, hangs out with his best friend cortisol. Ghrelin's made in our stomachs and guts and stimulates a feeling of starvation and production of fat. And when we're miserable, we can really get miserable. And leptin's full and satisfied, hangs out with the best friend serotonin. This is why when you have turkey, which is a precursor for serotonin, has tryptophan, which is a precursor for serotonin in it. And everybody's had a turkey dinner and is sitting watching the game at Thanksgiving, and everybody's going sleeping away. Well, that's because you've had full and satisfied from tons of serotonin, and you have relaxation and restfulness and happiness, and oh yeah. Okay, well, let's look at depression. Increased brain activity patterns in depression. When you're not depressed, your prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of all your learning and your ability to take care of yourself, gets all your blood oxygen energy. And when you're depressed, guess what? Our amygdala does. And Amy G is in charge of fight, flight, and freeze. Oh, that's not good. Let me move that back up here. Too much cortisol and too little dopamine for too long results in an increased risk of anxiety. Okay, anxiety first, followed by depression, a lack of anger control, sleep abnormalities, craving of starches and sweets, mood swings, and then extreme suicidal thoughts. It's just blood oxygen energy we've allowed to go. Now, where are our calming biochemicals made? Mostly in our two brains. Everything is connected. Our brain and our guts are connected. Your mood and your gut bacteria, they're connected. Our gut is our second brain, and that's because let me move this, has 500 million neurons that are in constant contact with the neurons in our first big brain. Okay, we have 100 billion up there, but we have 500 million. And The job of those 500 million is to produce hundreds of chemicals. That's what our job of our gut is to produce hundreds of chemicals that our brain and the rest of our body need to function. It's just a chemical manufacturing plant. It produces 85 to 95% of serotonin, 45 to 50, it's 40 to 50% of dopamine, 40 to 50 oxytocin. And it houses and programs 50% of our immune system that protects us from illness and disease. And what shuts it down, what makes it feel worse, feeling distress slows it down. So if we could belly breathe, we'd actually get it to work. And what happens when our gut gets distressed? Take a look at the jobs: digestion, elimination, metabolism, breaking down our food, immune system, manufacture of serotonin, oxy-T. What? Hey, when we have a distressed gut, digestion and elimination problems are normal. Acid reflux, indigestion, irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, colitis. Crohn's has a genetic component, but stress is what triggers it. Metabolism problems, gallbladder problems, weight gain and obesity, and diabetes type 2, high cholesterol and blood pressure, heart disease, slower healing. I'm into, immune system now, inflammations and allergies and infections. And now I'm not manufacturing serotonin and oxy-T, so I have anxiety and depression. When you are assessing a child's mental health, ask gut questions, because these answers can identify early warning signs. Implications for both medical and psychological interventions are spurring new research at a rate that we haven't seen in decades. And most mental health teams now have a trained gastroenterologist serving on the mental health panel with them. Yeah. And there's not many trained ones all over. Harvard does a wonderful, its medical center does a wonderful job of training gastroenterologists to serve in mental health capacities. So what is the vagus nerve? It's our gut-brain superhighway. Our vagal nerve transports the biochemicals we make in our gut, that's our second brain, throughout our body, especially to our first brain. And you know what? Let's take a look at it just real quickly before we quit. Our vagus nerve is called our compassion nerve, and our vagus nerves, left and right, are our vagal nervous system. I don't care what you call it. Let me get back here. There's your vagus nerve, okay? It comes right out of your brain stem, right up here. It's a cranial nerve X, or cranial nerve number 10. It's our parasympathetic. We have a sympathetic system, that's our spine, and a parasympathetic system is our vagus nerve. And it exits the brainstem, splits into two sides, and wanders throughout the thorax and abdomen. And it literally meets up with all of our, it's called the compassion, all of our organs, okay? It's called the compassion nerve because when we give compassion to others or we receive it from others, we stimulate our nerves and they grow stronger and connections get bigger and bigger. And it's responsible for constricting our bronchi and pushing air out. Now, I need to tell you that when we first started taking pictures of the vagal nervous system, we took it in prison. Well, you know how happy and contented prisoners are and how much compassion they generally have. So you can see that look at the vagus nerve, it's tiny little wires. Well, that's not how it is. About a decade after we started actually taking scans of the vagal nervous system, someone said, well, let's get the Dalai Lama and his crew in and do that. Well, they did, the Dalai Lama and his crew, and their vagus nervous system were like ropes, the kind that Tarzan swang on through the jungle, big, thick, heavy cords. Okay, and it had displaced many organs. In other words, moved up so they were so big that they actually put the organ a little bit out of place. They spend their day in compassion and meditation and laughing and giving and doing stuff for other. Yeah. But the single most important thing is it pushes air out. So when you're breathing, belly breathing, and you're pushing that air out using your diaphragm, you are actually building your compassionate nerves. You're actually building this entire system. Now, what's important about this is the following. Let me get over here. I have got just right here, I have actually done our little, let me put this back up here. Okay, I've got my seesaw or my balance beam, what do I say, with upset, reset, and offset. I have an accelerator and brakes on the upset and reset, and I have a shift and gear shift and a steering wheel under all set.
helping
Now,
people
let's think about this.
of addiction that still plagues our.
Okay. All right. So our DNA has preset us on go all the time, unless we apply the brakes so we can take life's turns. Now we've got to make decisions and take life's turns. But if we're going so fast we can't, wow. Okay. So if you look at it this way, our spinal cord, okay, is our sympathetic system. It's what's on go. It's our DNA set that thing up. Our vagus nerve, our parasympathetic, is our brakes. So our accelerator is our spinal cord, and our vagus nerve is our brakes. Now, you know, the spinal cord can be broken, and it's made of bone. And when those bone shards pierce the nerves, you're paralyzed. Well, you can't have that and still be alive. Well, you can break your spinal cord and be alive because the vagus nerve is protected. Remember, it runs through the body. It's just a nerve that runs and touches all of our different organs. And you'd have to hack me up. Now, if you hack me up, you can find the vagus nerve and hack it. But you know what? You got to do that. You can't, it can't break like the spinal cord. So the vagus nerve is actually safer than the spinal cord. So DNA has set us on go. And let me get here. And our upset accelerator and our reset brakes. Okay. And just dilates our pupil, constricts our pupils, inhibits saliva, stimulates saliva, beats our heart, makes our heart slow down. The thing I wanted you to see was breathing in and breathing out. When you break your spine, you can't breathe in. So you used to, when you broke your spine, when I was a girl, you died. And then we got the iron lung. And then we got oxygen generation. Then we can push air in. But guess what? Because my vagus nerve is okay, I can still spare air. So as long as I've got an oxygen generator, I can still be alive, even though I have a broken spine. I can't move anything below it, my neck, because breathing out is covered. It inhibits digestion. That's not good. It stimulates digestion. That's good. It slows and dysregulates elimination. That's bad. It regulates elimination. If you're sitting there with slow, dysregulated elimination and nothing's coming out, don't be pushing. Breathe. You find your diaphragm. We're going to cover that later on. And breathe out. You relax the muscles. And guess what? Things begin to happen. Breathing slowly, and it makes all the difference, because if you're breathing shallowly and rapidly or holding your breath, you're just adding more cortisol and speeding ourselves up. Breathing out longer than we breathe in calms us down, applies the brakes. So we can take any life turns we need. Breathing in, breathing out longer, puts more blood, oxygen, energy on our vagus nerve. Now, bottom lines, if you want to build positive distress management habits and resilience, understand that they're formed like we teach sports and fundamental motor skills by consistent, repeated modeling, coaching, and practice of skill sets. You have to show them how to do it, teach, tell them what you're going to do, show them how to do it, watch them do it, give them feedback. First, we build a skill or a set of skills, and then we practice it until we don't have to think about it. You don't think about walking and talking. You should feel the same way about calming down. Learning a new skill requires calm demonstration and modeling, calm explicit instruction, calm coaching and practice, calm positive feedback, calm support and encouragement, and repeat, and practice until it's a habit. Okay. How long does it take you to get from A to B? And the more trauma you experience, the longer the journey. The more trauma you have experienced, the longer it's going to take you from A to B. Patience on our part. Our habits wire and rewire. A habit is a learned attitude or behavior or skill, which through regular, consistent repetition and practice becomes automatic. It's accomplished without thinking. A habit is a learned reflex, like walking and talking. It's really slow process. The average time to reach automacy, which means done without thinking, is 66 days with a range of 18 to 254 days. Or if you had a teenager like I did, over 365 days to learn the smallest of habit. Sorry, teenagers were a great stress for us. Slow progress is better than no progress. He's a wonderful father today. So congratulations. You've set up a mental health initiative for children, and it is absolutely critical, and it's going to make a difference. But also know that the Iowa Department of Education is in providing grants to school districts to help them meet mental health needs and provide wraparound services for students and families. And in addition, the Iowa Department of Education is partnering with the University of Iowa's Baker Teacher Leader Center to establish a new Center for School Mental Health And that will provide training and professional development, both student teachers and practice teachers. Y'all are making a difference. You're making an enormous difference. It is the most exhausting, overwhelming thing to do because we have so many children off the edge, already off the beam. And we keep doing stuff to distress them. We're not helping. So, does anybody have a question? I probably don't have an answer, but I'm definitely there to give you a chance. So let me get my little screen back up here. Talking Karen, I'm going to put my little picture back on. Where am I? Right there. Yay. Let me go back over here and I'll turn myself. Oh, look at that. Okay. Adrian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yay. Have you gone through our questions? Do we have any?
I am looking in the chat right now.
Do you think we got a good recording? If not, I will record it over privately.
Yeah, it should be. We should
If you
have a
find
good
any glitches or
recording.
anything else, when I record these in my studio, it makes it a whole lot better, but
Okay.
This depends on what y'all need.
Okay. It looks like right now there's only one question, and it says, did they in the past want to take out the vagus nerves?
No, your vagus nerve, you can't take it out. You'd have to cut out all the organ. You can't take it out. The vagus nerve is, well, you'd have to hack the person up, and your heart would not beat. I mean, your vagus nerve is responsible for all of the, say, for instance, your spine's in charge of breathing in. Your vagus nerve is in charge of breathing out. Your vagus nerve is in charge, your spine is in charge of one thing, your vagus nerve is in charge of the opposite. So breathing in and breathing out is how we stay alive. Heartbeat, okay, your heart beats heavy, you calm it down with each, and they swap it out, swap it out. So you need both of them. It's like being on a seesaw. You have to have your spine working for you because you have to move. You have to do all the sorts of stuff your spine does, but you also need all the other things going on. And what we've done is ignore that. We've just rushed ourselves. When you rush, you're building cortisol. When you breathe rapidly, you're in a hurry, you don't slow down. And you know, when I'm driving, I do not do, when I do my belly breathing, I don't do yoga uses belly breathing. Tai Chi uses belly breathing. Martial arts uses belly breathing. When I was in high school, they wanted to give me martial arts because it would teach me how to manage my energy. Well, no one wanted me to manage my energy. They were scared to death of me. They didn't want to give me martial arts because I was just being equipped to hurt somebody. But I actually learned how to breathe. How they got me in there was telling me that I could use somebody else's energy to manage them. I love that. But what I did was learn how to manage myself. So it's not the same for everybody. Yoga, Tai Chi, and martial arts are on a continuum. And when we talk about our temperament, you'll understand that. But no, nobody wants to cut out the vagus nerve. If they did, they wanted to kill somebody. Anybody else? Does that make sense? Adrian, check with that person to see if that made sense.
Okay, I will. That's all I have in the chat for right now. Yes, she said your answer makes sense.
Oh, cool. Oh, good. Okay, yeah. So the vagus nerve is really important, and you want to grow it. You know, the best way to do it in the mornings, we're going to cover this, but I do a bagel. I lay in bed and I do my breathing. And by the way, I don't do any of that stuff like yoga or anything else. I can't sit still that long. That's not who I am. But I still do my Tai Chi, my martial arts. And I also do 20 different, I'd use 1 minute breathing, which is Martin Borison's 1 minute yoga. He calls it 1 minute meditation, 20 times a day. And I can do 1 minute at a time in the car, actually saving your life while I'm driving. And those kinds of things you can take care of yourself. And we're going to study, there's 60 different ways, naked and alone, that you can learn to calm yourself down. And it's for babies, you calm them down differently. Toddlers, you calm them down differently, depending on their temperament. You can teach them to manage themselves very quickly. But they don't all need to do the same thing because we're all different. We all need a calming tool we can use that's our own. Well, it's 11:30. If we don't have any more questions.
Nope, there's nothing else in the chat. So I think, yeah, if you have
Well,
anything else
cool.
to
We
add.
ended on time. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm really pleased that you did. And if you need to get a hold of me, Karen Williams Brown, you got a handout. Nobody's going to go through the video again unless you're doing training. So you've got a handout, 2 sides up, 2 sides, it's split in half. So it's easy to read each of the slides, and it'll be available to you. And if you have any questions, Karen Williams Brain at outlook.com. You can call me. I mean, not call me, but email me anytime you want to. And I'll get back to you. Usually at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't sleep either. I should be in jail. I'm just lucky not to be. We can cut that off the tape. Okay, my darlings, thank you for joining us. And we hope to have you back for the other 3 sessions.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Adrian. Bye. I'm going to cut out now.